Brother, wake up.
Fellow humans, we ask, can we together deliver peace and healing to heart and mind?
I'm not really sure, but Ulysses unheard or reheard the words he had heard. I mean, what is that?
It
Ulysses?
was there. I could see the audio, just so, we can't hear it in-house, but,
All right, well, welcome to the Ceox segment, which is so much different than the Unencrypted because
more riveting.
It's more riveting. I mean, it's like you can't peel yourself away from Ceox.
Exactly.
Now, Ceox, hold on a second. There we go. I just had the Facebook in the background, so yep.
Will Sierra be joining us?
So, no, Janice is just joining us for the first time, so we'll give it a little, we're going to spend some time with Janice here throughout the Ceox segment tonight. And so normally what goes on during Ceox is this is where we talk about, well-being in the marketplace. Like, this is sort of, the Ceox is from the Ministry of Entrepreneurship. It's part of, I'll be the CEO of You, some work that we're working on that side. But Ceox is just a character that I take on, if you will, and a channel that I manage is probably just the better way of saying that. And like Tim has Maverick, and that's sort of these channels that we're developing together separately, right? They represent, one represents him, one represents me, and we kind of have those things up there. So that's kind of what the Ceox Hour is all about, and is about this well-being in the marketplace. And we take this time to really have fun in that we are Buffalo Bills fans, and my daughter is a fanatic, and she's this incredibly caring, compassionate, incredibly chaotic, nuts Bills fan. And but she's also this very, very competent, strong woman. And, we talk about what it takes to be a champion, right? And not just a champion on the field, but, bringing your team along and making your team stronger. So when we talk about, your best well-being in the marketplace, we sort of mean the healing that needs to take up inside for it to be kind of made available to those outside, if you will, that kind of thing. And so it's let's be our best together through full and complete healing, which we believe only comes through Christ. And that may offend some people, and I'm sorry. We doesn't mean you can't be healed, and we got you. But hey, that's what Ceox is all about. And we use this time to just kind of welcome new guests who are kind of anywhere in their understanding on blockchain, and we try to kind of meet up with where they are. And depending on where people have their understandings, like sometimes we will have people on the Unencrypted Hour who are more developing, more technical side of it, and then we'll come up here, which is going to be the market, the community side of it. And at 9 o'clock with Maverick is where we join the Pirates, and that's just all social commentary, but actual forward progress, working together, kind of representation of what a distributed autonomous organization may look like as it comes together, where you have kind of common groups who see this common goal that they want to work on. And how do you kind of come into trust in a trustless society, those kinds of things, which are very, very economic in nature. So we also cover that during Ceox, and we'll also get into game theory, because it's important as you're building on the blockchain to understand the game theory and the way that all of this comes together, because we're building new economies, and to build new economies, we need to think very differently than we've thought before. And if we really want to experience true and complete healing, we need to kind of think differently than we've ever thought before, right? So welcome, Janice, to Ceox. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know how this relates to the section ahead, or if it does at all, because I see this, like you say, is a community section.
I'm sorry, what was that?
How does this relate, this part, to the last part?
So over on this side, we really just kind of go all the way to market, right? And like we go all the way from the market, which is then looking at the individual, and then actually getting into talking one to another. Because when we're talking about like the distributed autonomous organizations, or what they call these DATs, or these distributed autonomous trusts, is that the formation of well-being, of economics, the formation of that is changing dramatically. So we actually have to change the way we approach everything, right? So we have this time where we're like, okay, let's get to know one another. Let's kind of take questions from the community, or we take this time to plan games, right? And we literally have a game that we're working on called Shmub. And then, like I said, we take time to go through and have some fun with football. That's not happening tonight. My daughter gets into that, and so
I'm a New York Giants fan. I got to tell you right now.
What's that?
I'm a New York Giants fan.
Well, that's awesome. If we have to be friends with anybody, it may as well be the team that beat the Bills in the Super Bowl, right? Like, let's just go there. Like, just kind of respect to, hey, you won. It's like, that's what we're talking about. It's like being the best, kind of, even if you're not a real New York team. All right, so back to that. So you're asking, what is this for? So one of the manners of outreach, and it's a campaign. It's called Tagged by Ceox, and there's another one, Shared Hope, that we have a couple different campaigns that we're developing, that we kind of tag people and ask them to just come on and kind of share, like, okay, what made you interested, and what are you looking for in all of this, and really just kind of tell us more about you. And I know we had a long conversation, but this is more your chance to say, okay, to a whole world, because I have no idea how many people are watching, man. Right now, in all theoretic impossibilities, we're having anything more than 5 people watching. That would be huge, right? That would be absolutely huge. But yeah, it's going way up. I mean, it was at 1 like only last week. But yeah, so this is it's just like, so what brings what piques your interest? Just to anybody who might be able to hear you right now, like, tell us about you and where, why here, why now?
There's a technical aspect, which is very intriguing to me, and I'm learning more and more about that, from the bottom up. And then there's the part that you mentioned, which is, I'm still looking for that connection. That you mentioned words like healing and community, and from the personal, from the inside person out, which I don't know how people who are interested in blockchain for monetary reasons are going to want to connect with this part. But I can understand your thought process and how it should connect. So,
and if you will, that's actually an important point that you're making. Is for so long, people have sort of connected to currency as this, like, okay, it's like, it's a thing, it has a number to it, and the new currencies are more about a value, right? And true economies, and this is kind of like when you get into one of the Ceox segments we have is with Bruce Korber, who is an economics, studied economics, Austrian economics background from the school in Auburn College. So we're doing a series with him where he actually wrote he's got a thing called the Divine Economic Theory, and we go through how truly, when you look at what economy is, right? Economy is where we sort of begin to say, or put value of utility. We put value on utility, but then we also put value on things greater than utility. Like we put value on relationships, and we put value on brands, right? And marketing and Madison Avenue for years, they know that, and we kind of know that there's some influences that are going on. I mean, fashion is just a very influential market, as an example, and there's a lot of influences that come through those markets, and those influences aren't necessarily always the healthiest, including, let's say, the pursuit of currency, right? So if the pursuit of currency is what you're doing, and you're not really sitting back going, I'm running 1,000,000 miles an hour, but why am I running 1,000,000 miles an hour? Like, what is actually in it for me, and where is my own well-being? And if you're running for the rabbits,
people are looking for the money when they look at things like different types of currency, and what you're going to be starting up here, what we're going to be starting up here. They're not necessarily going to be looking for being their best person, and the things that you and I talked about, and healing and self-motivation. And I don't see how you're going to convince people that that's important if in their mind they're really pursuing watching their money grow.
Yeah, I don't need to convince anybody of anything. That's kind of the important thing that I've learned over life, is simply that I have a perspective, right? And I have an informed perspective on things, and we share it with people, and they take it for what it is, right? There are great conversations that can come from that. There's this wide spectrum of conversations that can come from the assessment of value and worth within an individual, right? And these are economic terms that are now being, now that we have communities, distributed communities being established based on economic values that are something other than currency, but we're calling them currency, right? That's an interesting, when you think about truly at the heart of a coin is, or what we were calling currency on blockchain, it's really, I mean, Tim, what would you say? I mean, it's truly nothing more than a rubber timestamp.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I mean, it's like a ledger.
Oh, okay, sounds like Tim. I lost Tim there.
Really?
I hear him.
Oh, okay.
You're good now.
Okay. Yeah, so it is kind of just like a timestamp machine, just letting you know, like, everything that goes along. It's just like stamp it's there, stamp it's there. So yeah, I would say
So
that's probably a good analogy.
You want to bring a more human aspect to this, and help people in other ways at the same time.
I'm going to say that it's not just us either. I think that a lot of people view blockchain and cryptocurrencies as a means of creating a more fair and just economic reality for the masses. I think that a lot of people believe that. I think that, and I think it's a fair belief. I think it's a defensible belief. I think it's a defensible position from a technological, economical, like from all of those. I mean, if I'm looking at mankind, I think it's a fair statement to say this technology is revolutionary, and it needs to be well handled by the people.
I agree with that, and I don't think I'm making my point very well. So if I'm going to focus right now, instead of wasting time, to focus on the human side of this, and what I'm hearing you say is, well, there's a very large break between people right now. The society is hurting, and everything going on inside of people from their past and life up until now all seems to be coming out in a really ugly manner. And people are pitted against people. So in order for something like this to succeed, we need more unity. Correct? Is that what you're saying? And people,
it's interesting. Okay, yes, right? Like, yes, 100%. I'm all on board. I would say it this way, that back when we were in Rochester, New York, we had a studio up at the Hungerford Studio 252. We were doing some work with some credit unions in town. We were doing some, economic development work. And I would say that all day long, I would have had you back then give that speech you just gave and say with absolute certainty, yep, she's got it 100%. Except for now, what I'm starting to figure out is that unity might not be what we think it is, that actually might be this sort of thing that's also been programmed into us in some ways, right? That unity doesn't demand conformity kind of idea, right? That unity can be something greater than a set of rules, but it sort of exists within a set of rules kind of thing.
Society needs rules in order to, drive your car down the street. There's rules that are more tactical, and then there's rules that people think that they're bound by, but are they really?
Right.
And then there's a lot of diversity and a lot of acceptance that isn't going on right now of other people's thoughts and beliefs. Everything comes from your own viewpoint, your personality, your the way you were raised, where you are in maybe your career or money or economics. Your viewpoint and everything around you is really affected by your personal self. And most people are really hurting inside and are looking for something somewhere, and they're making things worse because for one thing, people are entwined with each other, whether we want to agree about that or not. We need each other.
Yeah.
There's no separation and divide. We are stronger and better in aggregate.
That's right.
But we're all bringing our own problems to that.
Correct.
We all have these huge burdens, and we're all messed up in some way. And we, to bring us to a place where we're going to work on projects together, or we're going to heal, to make the big picture better and stronger, and less able for it to break up, like a partnership. We have a partnership with each other. So I do have some ideas about that from my background.
So a few things. I mean, you've said a couple things. I want to kind of write this down because what you just talked about, the partnership piece of it, I think is important, and the background there.
Yeah, because you're talking about contracts. So
one of the things I'd kind of try to unpack. You just said a lot, and you to unpack all of that a lot for getting to the point where, we're all bringing our own hurt to the game, right? And tonight's theme is called Marking Your Territory, right? And it's why, because today I marked some territory in my head as I was doing it. I was starting to think about how we define those, how you would define space in a metaverse. Like, how would I define and mark territory in the metaverse? So I started going down that path a little bit. But really, it was driven by the fact that I had such a good kind of time watching the grand puppies, because I figured out, like, I can sort of direct where the dogs poop, right? And I know that it sounds horrible, but this is what I said. This is what I told Tim tonight. I said, tonight's theme is mark territory. So just be a good human and do as dogs do. Pee and poop where each other pees and poops, to know we are friendly enough to share crappy domain, but let's help each other not to step in it. So that's our whole thing tonight, is this idea of, okay, look, we all come with a bunch of crap, right? We all come dirty. We all come like literally have made 1,000 mistakes according to the rules that have been thrust upon us by mankind. Like, we make 1,000 mistakes reaching this point. And the world always tries to judge us, like, okay, you did this or you did that. Look at your finances. Look at your credit score. Look at your past. Look at who you did. And I hear Jesus say that, he without the sin pick up, you got it, right? Like, I hear Jesus in that moment saying, come on now. Where's the grace? Okay, thank you, Lord. Like, there's a lot that goes into carrying that ugliness kind of forward with one another and giving it up together. But there's this incredibly unique um, aspect of the blockchain is that it doesn't have to matter how your partners produce, because in time the network produces. And it's sort of this natural thing that says, look, time and again, you will have disagreements, and those are things we call forks. And there's an argument that says all of the forks will eventually come back together because it's senseless to have multiple chains like this. But it doesn't matter. We've had forks. All of the blockchain, you went from BTC to BSV to Ethereum to Cardano and all of these other ones. They're not all forks in the truest sense of the word, but there are true forks in those first chains. And then there are forks in other chains, and in many ways, the other chains are just trying to be different versions or better versions of the previous chain. So it's not a fork; it's a complete rewrite. But there's all of this that has to get figured out, and people are bringing to this their economic thoughts, right? They're actually saying, okay, this is why we're approaching things this way or that way. And there's this really, really weirdness associated with blockchain, and that's Satoshi Nakamoto. Now, I think I mentioned Satoshi to you before.
Yep.
But what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Satoshi Nakamoto, and we're going to make sure we cover before the end of the night the partnerships. And it'll be interesting because the entire court case going on right now with Craig Wright, who they're basically saying is Satoshi Nakamoto, is really exploring legal partnerships and how they form. And some people are saying that even this trial had to come to pass in order to create a more fair and free distribution system. So we'll talk about that after our 2-minute sponsor break, which looks not at all like a sponsor break. It just looks like a holder that we have because we
Just
definitely
like that. We came in hot.
All right, we are hot again. Here we go. All right, so we kind of just awesome conversation, which is okay. So how does healing really come through all of this? And um, eh, that's a deep question, right? And it goes very very deep in many directions. And obviously that's just a that's an aspect of the Ceox character, the Ceox channel. And obviously we also keep in the crypto side of things, and this is where we are planning a shmub game, which is just kind of fun. We'll kind of get into that at some other time. And tonight we're talking with Janice, and she's kind of sharing with us, her thoughts on the blockchain world. And she was sharing that, there's some concerns over, some partnerships and how does that work? And then even sort of like, how do you get into valuing things a little bit differently? But I'll kind of let her pick up and share your thoughts a little bit further, Janice.
Well, and I'm new at this group. So you're talking about a group of people who are going to be putting a contract together, correct? Contracts, I believe that Tim called it a smart contract.
Yep.
But it's still a contract. I mean, it's still going to have an offer, acceptance, and consideration.
Yep.
And it's going to be very difficult to get a group of people, especially if it's sizable, all on the same page. So I could see where the human aspect, I could see now where you're pulling that in. When you develop something like that, and I have done contract development, and I am a certified paralegal, and I have many years of manufacturing operations experience, and adjunct teaching and writing programs or writing even releases and things like that, writing and editing. So I have some ideas, first of all, and I don't know what people are really interested in and how much they're interested in this. And actually, when I started to understand how senior people, say, in society want to stay in their own homes and maybe they don't have any family, or maybe they don't have any children, and maybe they never married, or they're widowed, either widow or widower, and they there's been a lot of articles, even in Rochester, New York, about how hard it is and how lonely these people are. Nobody's reaching out. Sometimes they have good neighbors that mow their lawn for them, help them snow blow their driveway and stuff, but they are isolated and die younger than they have to. So I had some ideas which I shared with you, and you've had similar ideas of how to help these people reinvent themselves. And first I was thinking about older ages, but then I started talking to the older and then younger baby boomers who may be retired early or have know of people in these situations, or maybe they're not in that situation, but they don't know what to do with themselves now that they're retired. So maybe they want to revisit old talent or discover themselves again and the things that they couldn't do while they were raising children, or they have no transportation, or money might be limited. There's limitations, and they can't seem to connect with society or with each other. This is a big problem. It goes above and beyond senior centers. A lot of people are put in homes, say, and don't have family visiting them. They're just put there and left there. And what kind of society are we that, we haven't reached out to we haven't helped these people. So I can't.
So I think that those are all great questions, right? And when we were doing some of the work in Rochester with Restoration Rochester, that kind of time frame, and we were doing the work with the studios and really trying to, like, okay, let us understand, or let's hear what's going on in the community. And the complaint that you're bringing is true, right? It's like, it's an honest complaint, and it's been sort of verified by multiple times of evidence that there are people who need people, And quite frankly, coordinating that can't be the most challenging thing in the world. I mean, we could coordinate that, and certainly there are funds available to actually support that kind of thing. And they started doing something like that in New York with the social workers, and that's it. So it's interesting that that's a piece of it. But I do think with blockchain, we're actually able to begin kind of incentivizing where others may not be, right? Because we sort of get to begin to determine where we put our assets, where we put our time, where we put our energy. And when we put our energy together with those who we can work with, we get further together, and we kind of build that up. And you build up these economies that sort of value things that we think create greater value, like, let's say, healthy families. And as you have all these independent kind of economies growing through all these different chains, so now you actually have sort of competition amongst economic theories, right? And then they're instantly exchangeable with one another, so you can kind of raise up a stronger currencies. But because of its decentralized nature, it's still always sort of kind of balancing it itself out, so you don't have a lot of centralization of power. So there is just so much that can be done right now. When we look at realistically, we know that currency has been the sort of drug of choice for most of mankind, right? Like, we know that money and currency drives power and influence, and people go after that. But if we revalue what and sort of what you're saying is, if we reinvent, right? If we truly reinvent ourselves, if we truly reinvent our thinking, and we truly reinvent our economies, maybe all of those broken thoughts are gone.
You can lose a lot of people, though, in reinvention. It's like, for many years, there were no computers in the workplace. And then there were systems, and then now we don't do anything without a system. In implementing a new system, you lost all those people who are now angry because they have seniority, and they don't feel they're being treated right, and they're afraid of a new technology. They're afraid of it. Yep. So the disconnect is maybe management, he didn't pull them in, or they don't feel valued or treated like they should be. So we're switching to a brand new type of currency. You're going to find a lot of backlash, a lot of people who are afraid of it, don't believe in it, don't understand it, which is huge.
Oh, don't understand it. That goes back to Tim's point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, yeah, that goes back to Tim's point. The lack of understanding, and the only way to really do it is through the education, right? And so if we go to the legal side of this for a second, about the contract side, and I know Tim said it's not actually a contract, but it let's give it the legal. It's literally called a contract in the code, right? So it's actually a contract on a blockchain. And one of the implications of that is, how legal is that contract within the legislated legalities, right? So there's compliance or requirements. At the lowest, I can't think of the name right now. At the lowest architectural level of your chips and everything, it's like your BIOS level. There's the rules, right, that run the system. So you've got to kind of comply with those, and they can kind of go forward from there. But
are they rules or laws? I could start researching that. Are they rules that are?
CoinGeek. There's a couple guys on CoinGeek. I'll find, if I can. I'll have to see if I can find their names again. I'm trying to read up more on this. It's very interesting, and in fact, the big Craig Wright, Satoshi Nakamoto, Kleinman court case is really sort of about all of this. And it's kind of an interesting how are courts interpreting what was written to a blockchain. Because what is written to a blockchain is sort of like a commitment to myself, secured by somebody else, or secured with everybody else, right? Kind of a weird, that's probably
in conjunction with everyone else.
There you go. Right. So it's like this. Okay. So that's kind of what this court case is okay, we've got these set of laws, and how are these laws going to govern now the distribution is probably the wrong word, but we'll go with distribution of coins on a chain, right? But that's going to have to be a court order. So it's once it goes to the court order, they can sort of update the contract on the blockchain, and the miners just come into agreement with it because they've been given a court order to do so, and they can change sort of the agreement that was first there, right? So when the contract was written many years ago to create X number of Bitcoins, and that was not really a contract. Oh, actually, that probably wasn't it?
Contract or an agreement, because these groups are not really contracts with the government, correct?
Correct. No, they're contracts with the blockchain.
Right. So they're making up their own rules that they all follow, right?
Exactly.
You're all contracts with each other. So what do you, when you say courts and stuff, what do you mean? Future.
All right, so let's take a 2-minute break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the Satoshi case and how that plays into all of that.
Can you spell Satoshi?
Satoshi. All right, we'll be back in a minute. That I think I'm starting to enjoy telling a little bit more frequently. So, Janice, you asked who Satoshi was. Satoshi Nakamoto is a pseudonym given or agreed upon, and I'm trying to choose some words a little bit here because there seems to be some question whether Satoshi Nakamoto is a group of people or is one person.
See the Wall Street Journal article. Is this against the state of Florida?
What's that? No. It's in Florida. This particular case is being brought by Ira Kleinman, who is Dave Kleinman's brother, and he's bringing it on behalf of the estate of Dave Kleinman, and claiming that that Dave was a partner in Bitcoin, and that these Bitcoins would need to be moved to him. Now, it's
Crazy
really interesting because Craig Wright, who many on the internet would say is the biggest scam artist on the earth right now, and has a fair past to justify that, but would also be a kind of billionaire in his own right, where states seem to have maybe been going after him, like over in Australia, and some interesting stories that come out of all of that, and sort of how taxation would happen on blockchain. Now, this is sort of one of the things on Bitcoin. This is sort of one of the things that came out of the trial, I think it was this week, is that Craig Wright had reported the blockchain, the Bitcoin on his taxes in like 2009. So this would be an indication that in 2009 he had them, and this sort of establishes a time frame of things and blah, 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 blah. So anyways, this court case brings out a whole bunch of very interesting things. First off is whether or not there's any way that this proves definitively that Craig Wright is Satoshi. And it does seem to be that there are means that he could do that to prove it definitively. Now, if that happens, what we don't know is whether or not the world implodes at that point or at some point in a future thereafter. But I say that in all seriousness because Coinbase.com, one of the big exchanges right now. Yeah, when they went through for their IPO, they actually designated that if Craig Wright was exposed as Satoshi, that it was a risk to their organization. So one of the things that you find as you get deeper and deeper into the blockchain, and like Bitcoin and specifically, are the corporations that are sort of controlling interests in specific markets. And what I mean by that is pretty much at the top of the food chain on BTC is MasterCard and some of the other banks. And therefore, they're trying to determine how it is that BTC is rolled out. And then there was some other stuff for the Bitcoin Cash and how that was a little bit differently. But then it got to BSV, which is Craig Wright. Actually, BSV stands for Bitcoin Satoshi Vision. And if this Craig Wright delivers to the world Satoshi's vision, it could spell some real bad news for some other coins and chains. And we're talking massive. I don't know what you called them, Tim. The other day we were talking about it. It was the internet bubble, and what was it, pets.com or something like that. And we kind of said that maybe Bitcoin will be the blockchain's pets.com.
What was it? Yeah, so the .com bubble, we were talking about that, and what was the website? There was a couple of them actually, but yeah, when you watch the evolution of the internet, and you see all these people running out and going out and grabbing these domains that pretty much held no value. I mean, it was all just kind of virtual value. And they were buying up all these domains for thousands and thousands of dollars and then turning around and selling them for tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, it was just this kind of like exchange of, and for rightly so, you got like att.com or, Microsoft.com or, all these main websites. What was the big one? There was always people after the government websites, and so you had all these people that were out there pursuing it. But then what ended up happening is it drove so much value into there that it just imploded it on itself, and all of a sudden,
it's kind of fun. I mean, think about this for a second. Like, think on what you're talking. How is it, literally, that pets.com fails? Like, literally, yeah. How does that fail? Right? Like, right. In today's line of thinking. Going into, if we had this technology today, right, and we had all of the experience of the e-commerce, everything, it's sort of comical to think that, like, we didn't know how to do e-commerce, right?
Right.
That's kind of what that was. Like, oh, look, world, we're going to do, oh, no, we're going to fail miserably at e-commerce, or, right, like, because there was so much more that went into it. But,
Yeah.
some
There,
kind
well,
of,
that you just hit it. Is there was so much more that went into it that had no value that it just. I mean, it was unbelievable how much it turned when everything just kind of turned upside down when we hit the .com bubble. And what could happen is we could see a lot of that same type of thing with all of this, the blockchain and all of these cryptocurrencies that are out there that are basing their value on kind of like these empty unknown things because we're still so early in the process.
yeah. And I mean, ultimately, what is it? The longest chain wins, right? That's kind
Yep.
of the
Well, that's the more
argument from day
secure. That's
one.
the more secure chain.
Right, like the longest chain wins, and anything on Bitcoin is going to have value, a head start, right? Anything on the Bitcoin is okay. So we got a head start because the chain is longer, and now it starts to go which one can transact faster, and you're like, well, that's certainly BSV. Which one can do more, and that's certainly BSV, and there's some questions going on over with Taproot that just got put out there for Bitcoin. But these are things that like we can't even keep up with. I mean, this is that when we say that what is going on right now is so huge. Let's just continue down the Craig Wright conversation for a little moment, because arguably we could say that all of this is a Hollywood scripted media production. Literally, we could of the court case, we could say that. I mean, if you watch any of the proceedings coming out from CoinGeek, it's like something right out of Law and Order. Dun dun dun, right? And it's like it's there's so much drama built into the case itself that you could sit there and go like, come on, even this is part of the marketing. And I have to sit there and wonder like how much of Satoshi Nakamoto was just part of the marketing. But then there's also some argument that gets very, very deep into like, so at the depths of blockchain are things like proof of work and the ETOX, whatever. There's like these depths of things. And Tim was talking about the 180 earlier, like that, it gets really deep, but okay, you start to kind of get it. But if you approach systematically without economic theory built into it, you kind of come crushing down on yourself on blockchain. And that was the difference that what Craig Wright has built into BSV in the protocol is sort of the economics of humanism, which is that we always want to keep things near free so that it remains very affordable. And the idea, BSV was literally designed to be affordable continuously based on sound economic theory, and it's proving to do that right now. And if BSV truly does outperform the other major networks, the other major blockchains that are out there, and people come to realize that BTC is like the same 100 million Satoshis, I don't know what that means. I don't know what, where we go from there.
Can I say something?
Yep.
For the viewers, this looks like a really fascinating case, and because of the regulation coming, and for anybody who wants to research it, if they're kind of a geek like me, it's Kleiman versus Wright, or Kleeman versus Wright, United States District Court, Southern District of Florida, which I believe is Miami. It's been case number 18-CV is in Victor -80176 Bloom, the word Bloom, BLOOM /Reinhardt, which is REIN is in Nancy HART. From September 18th of 2020, and that's the case that's been playing out that is worth like 69 billion Bitcoins, or there was 1 million Bitcoins that is now worth 69 or something like that.
So
I'm not done.
So there's question. Yeah, this is the fun stuff about this case. Also, like if you follow it close enough, not only does your mind explode, but you sit there and you go, okay, I sort of get what's going on here, because it's legal economics playing out.
And how does the government not get involved and regulate this? And what's that regulation going to look like?
Yeah, no, and that's it, and those are the great questions. So tonight after our Ceox segment here at 9:00 is we join the Pirates on Maverick, and you're welcome to stay on and join the Pirates with us. And
Are they dangerous?
That's kind of where we start to. What's that?
Are they dangerous?
I think
Are they
perhaps
scary?
they are, because they're meant to be. They are pirates, so we must know that they may be. But that's where, we got it. Like with them, as we start to get into more of that social side of it, and they're more on the anarchy side, which is like absolutely not. I don't want any government in there. And part of the reasons that they're the pirates is that they're building on the pirate blockchain, which is a privacy coin. And the privacy coins are really under attack for a number of reasons. I mean, because there are means of creating sort of fair governance between one another on a blockchain versus just absolutely no ability to govern. So, fair question about privacy coins and their impact on society. So there's going to be some, how do those play out as they come through? But before we get to that, I mean, they're there. And ultimately, you're probably going to have some versions of it where, you can store here or there, but they'll begin to track where you came through. And if you came through a pirate network and they don't want, fine, you can't go through the pirate network, right? I mean, it's just the same way we've done trade routes all the years, right? Like pirates not allowed on this trade route, whatever. We don't exchange, in pirate coin. So we're at
too much regulation. Look what's happening with the American dollar, which is what's led to this. Too much regulation. So I could see what you're saying is the pirates not wanting regulation.
That's right. And the argument is that you want to build on go to the rules, right? Like the blockchain, which allows for self-governance, but is made stronger through consensus, right? So it's like I can help govern myself, and now I can govern stronger together with others. Good stuff there. So we're coming up on our transition to the Pirates, which is always kind of fun. So Janice, you came on, you weren't sure what to expect. You were nervous. How you feeling? What do you think?
Oh, great. Because, the more you could see the pieces coming together. I mean, this is my first night on. So, I got questions later. I think this is great.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by this court case already because, of the ramifications and what direction it's going to go in. And like I said, if anybody wants to research it, you might want to if you're involved in, any kind of Bitcoin or any kind of cryptocurrency at all. Satoshi Nakamoto and who he is and how this court case even came about and then what's going to happen and Kleiman versus Wright, and that's going on right now in Miami. They might have had closing arguments. I'm not sure.
It's this case is very, very interesting. I a lot of people don't get it because like I say, at the very base of it is sort of how governments will have legal consequence over a fair blockchain, right? Because it got to where it was through consensus of itself, has the value of the market that it created on its own. So it does exist, and we fairly governed it to there. So as a wealth tool, it's been fairly governed. Now I will say that it was hijacked at some point in time, and that really the technology was branded as branded with a name. And I think that copyrighted name is no longer going to be able to be used by everybody. So it may come out that Craig Wright may actually own the copyrights to the name Bitcoin, right? To the name Bitcoin. So if he has the rights to the name Bitcoin, BTC can no longer call themselves Bitcoin, and then they have to explain to the world why they're rebranding the largest Bitcoin in the world. We're moving to Satoshis.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us, and we'll probably be reaching out again, and we'll be chatting soon because this is kind of the first piece, and we'll keep going on from there. Have a great night, Janice. Are you going to stick around? You're going to stay on for the pirates?
Of course I'm sticking around. I want to meet these pirates.
Okay, awesome. All right, yeah, so this is going to take a little bit of a change because now we have to, I don't know how much it'll look different on our end, but Tim's going to have to do a couple things. So, Tim, you want to go to break? And
we're heading out. So, thanks for joining us on Ceox. See you next time.